that has triggered a lot of interest across the industry, not just the technology side and also on the
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Simulated Reality Podcast. I'm Vijayalakshmi Anandan, and joining me in conversation today is Muthu Chandra, who is a Chief Data Scientist at Ascendion, and we will be discussing more about the optimal methods to pinpoint the most suitable use cases for generative AI. Hello, Muthu. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you very much for a great opportunity to meet you all.
You're most welcome, and I'm also honored to be a part of this conversation with you. I hope you're doing well and everything's going great.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Except the Bangalore traffic, rest all good.
I
Yeah,
mean, you just took a flight to Bangalore and you had to commute to the city.
yeah,
Totally understandable. Thanks for being
all
here.
good. Yeah.
So, my first question to you, as I highlighted in the topic that we are going to talk about, right? So, use cases are at the core of any technology's practical application, right?
Yes.
So, when it comes to generative AI, for the benefit of our audience, could you tell us about the concept of use cases and how essential are they in harnessing the power of the said technology?
Absolutely. That's a very interesting question to start with, right? So the first and foremost thing, the Gen AI, that has triggered a lot of interest across the industry, not just the technology side and also on the business focus too, right? But when it comes to Gen AI, the basic understanding across the industry is like, let me look at that as a technology, right? Like that's not actually a technology driven solutioning approach. We should take it's more about the business front, how we can look at the business, what value that Gen AI can handle it, right? So that is where these use cases take the driver's seat. So to make sure any business impact that AI can make, and from that point, how Gen AI can be applicable. So that's the way like we need to look at it, right? And when we are talking about AI, it can be solved with a general or a simplest AI algorithm. There are cases, and there are cases definitely like you need Gen AI, the most advanced level that you can apply, right? But how will you be able to identify that?
Hmm.
So you need to start with the use cases, right? So the first and foremost thing, like identify your business objectives. And after identifying the business objective, don't jump into the technology side. Look at the data. Do you have the enough data in place? Do you have a
Right.
good quality of data compared to the quantity? And how your data is distributed across different scenarios that satisfies your use cases. At that point, you can decide whether you need to take a route of a typical traditional AI. When I say traditional AI, whichever is not Gen AI, I call it as traditional AI. That's it.
Right, right.
So the traditional AI or a Gen AI, we need to pick it up like that. And the most important thing, it shouldn't be driven just by the technology team or just by the business team or just by the data team. It has to be together. Like
The
it's a collaborative
collaboration.
effort. That's
Yes.
what the most important point that we need to focus. Yeah.
Right. Moving on to the next question, could you walk us through the steps and considerations that one needs to take while they're pinpointing the most suitable use case for generative AI within an organization? And an extension to that question, what methodologies and criteria should decision makers, take into consideration while they are making this determination?
Absolutely. That's a good follow-up question compared to the first one, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to the use cases, right, there are like, I would call it like, it can be more than five, six steps actually. It can go broader also. But the basic five steps that are like very important thing, like talk to your business people. Okay, the first and foremost thing, don't even think about my leadership is pushing to do something in Gen AI because there is a FOMO going on in the industry, right? Like everybody want to do Gen AI, something they want to do, something they want to experiment. That is good. It's a healthy environment. But the important thing is like you need to start with the business team to understand what is that really the business team is looking for. Step one. The step two, as I said, the data piece, right? Because business can tell you that, hey, I want to do customer support optimization. Okay. They don't know whether it can be done through a typical automation approach or automation approach using Java or like you want to do it through Gen AI. They don't know. But as a technology person, you can look at the data and make a decision whether the data is available, the right data is available, then take it to the next level. That's the second step. The third step is picking up the right approach, the technology approach, whether AI or Gen AI. Okay. And obviously, if you're ending up with Gen AI, the fourth key step is like the ROI, right? Okay, fine, well and good. Like I know what is the business problem. I have the data, I have the algorithm, but what is the ROI? So that's what I was talking to one of my friend earlier. Like if you want to do 1 + 1 = 2, do you really need a computer to do that, right? Similar to that, there are cases where Gen AI is more powerful than any other AI stuff in the world. But that nevertheless, it's more the power, more the responsibility, right? So like we need to use it more responsibly.
Absolutely.
That's a fourth thing, and the most important thing, the last one is keep human in loop. That is very important because who is going to certify the outcome of your Gen AI stuff? Somebody has to certify. But if somebody has to certify, you need to have a baseline of your outcome,
Right.
right? Somebody has to baseline, and then you can compare that outcome with the baseline and decide what's happening, right? So human in loop, then obviously that will go as a feedback.
Right.
That's an important thing.
Okay.
So for the follow-up, there are methods, right? Like so, there are multiple methods that we can follow. The first and foremost thing, the ROI calculation is the key for us. Okay, without ROI, don't even get into the larger scale of Gen AI. You need to focus on probably experimentation. That is fine, but based on the experimentation outcome, you need to decide the ROI. Okay, and the second most important thing is the accuracy and the
Right.
quality of the outcome.
Yeah.
Because today, with the smaller amount of data, you may see you're getting a better accuracy. The model is giving you a proper response. But what if, like, if I'm adding too much of data or
Right.
like more and more data, then we will get into a hallucination also, right? There is a possibility. How will you measure that? So the measurement is the another key thing.
So we
That's
do
my
have questions regarding, the measurement and the success regarding
right.
Gen AI use cases. We can park that thought. Now, moving on to the next question. Now, integrating generative AI into any company's use cases can bring about a lot of innovation, right? On the flip side, we are also looking at potential risks. So, how can decision makers strike a balance, between implementing these cutting edge technologies at the same time they're also mitigating potential risks,
Absolutely.
right?
Right.
Especially when we are looking at industries where there are a lot of stringent regulations or privacy concerns. Yeah, that's my question.
Absolutely. So the biggest challenge in the industry is when they are looking at the Gen AI. Everybody looks at the outcome at that point, but over the period, when it goes to larger scale, there will be a lot of impact to your privacy. Okay, and obviously there are like a lot of impact to your data security too. So looking at the risk that are involved as part of Gen AI is a key thing that we need to do as a step one,
Correct.
right? So are we really ready for the Gen AI journey? Is my organization really ready for the Gen AI journey? Do I have the right policies, AI policies in place that can secure my data?
Right.
Because once the data is started getting released, like it's hard to control because by the time like you realize and try to put a fix, the data already been exposed,
Right.
correct? So that is where like the industry leaders and also the organizations, they are looking at setting up the AI policies for even, it doesn't matter like whether you're a small organization or a bigger organization, data is data, right? And you have your customers and you should take care of your customer. So risk assessment and the mitigation that we need to do, the first and foremost thing, and you need to have the score for your risk too, right? You need to have a threshold
Right.
because every technology and every solution may have a risk, but to what extent is what like we need to look at it. So
Right.
that is where like you need to have a continuous assessment. So today I can define a risk assessment strategy and I'm doing a risk assessment, so my score is like perfect. Okay, I'm starting my project, but do I need to stop at that point or like do I need to continue to do the risk assessment? That is where the key action comes into play.
Right.
So that's important. Risk assessment is what the key for us, and ethical considerations. That is another key thing. And the biggest challenge in ethical consideration, like how will you define the ethical aspects? Because depends on what data you're using. You need to define a core element level ethical considerations.
Absolutely.
That is important.
Yeah. And also with the government coming up with policies, right, in
Yes.
terms
Yeah.
of regulation, we need to adhere to that as well. So that also needs to be another layer
Yes.
of protection if you're talking
Yes.
about it,
Yes.
right?
So in my opinion, like the government policies is the first layer,
Correct.
and obviously for that, in order to achieve that layer, there are like components, the underlying components that we need to focus at the organization level.
Right.
So that is very important. Yeah.
Absolutely. Moving on to the next question. Let's say an organization has been able to successfully identify and determine, a use case for generative AI. My question to you is, how can they measure the success of such an integration? Right? Like, what are some KPIs or benchmarks that they can take into account to make sure that they are progressing in the right direction and achieving the set goals?
The most depth question, right? Yeah. And most difficult one, because every organization have their own standards to measure the outcome. But in general, if you look at it, ethical aspects, like how much of your conversational outcome from generative AI is biased. So the bias is what the key parameter that we need to look at it, because even your chatbot can say like, I don't know the answer. That is far enough, okay, and good enough to decide the bot is working as expected, rather
Right.
than giving you the wrong answer, right?
Absolutely.
So that is one, the bias front, we need to look at it. The second most important thing is how much of your data changes that you are considering to feedback into your model over the period, right? So there are cases like we never retrain the model itself, right? It doesn't matter whether it is AI or Gen AI, right? Like it's all about like educating a children, right? Like how frequently you're giving a feedback to make it better,
Right.
right? So that is an important parameter we need to consider. So how will you decide how many times your data is getting drifted, right? Changing over the period. That has to be the key parameter to decide your outcome accuracy, right?
Understood.
So these are the different measurements that you can do it, okay? And nevertheless, like there may be like 10 different other parameters you may consider, but in general I'm saying, but depends on the organization, it varies.
And also
Yeah.
the case to case basis,
Yes.
wherever use cases are in a specific industry, it will depend on that.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Now, moving on, as technology continually evolves, generative AI is also expanding, right? So, can you highlight certain emerging use cases or trends where you are seeing that, it might shape the future of generative AI? And also, what industries or domains do you think will pick this up?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'll start with the use cases, then I'll connect to the industry.
Right.
Customer support is the topmost use case that I see in the industry that will have a huge impact of Gen AI. Because like looking at the pattern of the customer's conversation and give a most personalized experience to the customer, rather than giving very generic information like a typical IVRS systems, right? Like
Right. Yeah.
interactive voice response systems. Customer support is the one. The second one is like the hyper personalization. So, for example, like based on my pattern of purchasing goods, electronic goods, for example. So the next time when I'm getting into the store, I can have my own chatbot like that can give my more personalized recommendations, right?
Right.
And the way how Gen AI can help here is like kind of an human-like interaction. That is more important, right? And other than that, there are like the productivity improvement, right? The developer's productivity improvement.
Absolutely.
How can I help my developer to do a unit testing in a faster phase, or system testing, or regression testing, and code development, right? There are multiple ways that you can improve the productivity of a developer. I can write a code, but generative AI can review my code and give me a feedback based on the industry standards. So these
Right.
are the top use cases that anybody can see the value of Gen AI. And industry-wise, if you look at it, the banking, healthcare, and the manufacturing industries, they are picking up a lot. But compared to any other industry, healthcare and banking are the top industries that they have benefit out of it, because obviously the customer support will come into play, hyper
Absolutely.
personalization come into play,
Yeah.
right? And retail industry, if you take it, right,
Yeah.
there are also like a lot of opportunities how you can fine tune the recommendation engines that are exist in the market, right? So number of use cases are going to be keep growing in Gen AI. The only thing we need to decide, as I said, like you have a right data and are you really ready for that? An
Right.
important thing, computation. You need to decide. Okay.
Absolutely.
In some places you can have a very simple algorithm that can solve with a lesser cost. Why
Yeah.
you need to do with Gen AI,
Yeah.
right? So those kind of decisions will drive these use cases in the industry.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're caught up to speed with the OpenAI Dev Day conference, right? And they have
Yeah.
come up with something called GPTs, where they're going to roll out, specific use cases, as in you can custom build those,
Yes.
right? And that is an opportunity for a lot of use cases to come about, right? So how
Yes.
do you think that whole thing is going to pan out?
So this is similar to like how Azure AI in the past, like they have come up with saying like, hey, we do have like customized models that you can use for your use cases, right?
Yeah.
This is definitely going to help the industry to make their solutions faster to the market. The important thing, like if it is already custom made, like you don't need to really have a bigger team to do all these stuffs, right? Like you can
Exactly.
have like kind of a plug and playable approach, right? That is where like democratizing the AI is coming into play, rather than like relying on a lot of AI ML engineers to help us in developing these things, and
Right.
we don't need to go to that route, right? So it's going to be lot helpful for the industry and also for the developers, and moreover, it will generate a lot of ideas because you don't need to worry about the technology now.
Right.
You worry about the business problems, right? Like
True.
so you develop something and that will trigger to some other use case and try it out. And moreover, if the models are already existing, you don't need to spend time on developing them. You can just repurpose and
Correct.
see what is the best outcome that you can get for the use cases.
Yeah.
And you don't believe you have 10 use cases, out of that, like which model is fit for that 10 use case, you can easily find it out, right?
Right.
That's a very good initiative that we have seen, and also um, yeah, like
It's
as you
more of,
will
yeah,
see
it's going to
better outcome.
streamline the
Yeah,
process going
yes,
forward.
they
That
will
is
do
what
it.
is the
Yeah,
direction that we're looking at.
yes.
So as we're approaching the end of this particular conversation that we had, are there any final thoughts or messages that you would like to share, especially to, business leaders or decision makers that may be watching this particular video? And they want to harness the potential of use cases for generative AI. Any recommendations that you would like to leave them with?
Absolutely. So the one important thing I want to highlight is, yes, Gen AI is really in a fast track, but before getting into that, like assess your need, and then decide like whether you need to get into Gen AI, because there are many cases like you really don't need to go with Gen AI.
Right.
But important thing, like do the assessment, check for the data, then get into the journey. And obviously, I would strongly recommend experiment first to make sure your environment is suitable to do this. If not, definitely like the industry experts available to make it better for you, right?
Right.
So that you fail fast, so that like you know how to get these things fixed. That's the important thing that we need to look at it, because everybody are having expertise in their domain, and
Absolutely.
obviously they have technology experts. The
Right.
only thing, like who is failing faster will gain more experience
Knowledge and
in solving
experience.
the problem. That's
Right,
what
right.
my point. Yeah.
Very well put, and thank you so much. That was an insightful talk, Muthu Chandra, and it was nice having you. And I'm sure there are a lot of takeaways from this conversation, especially for people who are looking into use cases for generative AI.
And thank you very much for this opportunity to share my experience and the knowledge, and looking forward for more. Thank you very much.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.